So I'm going to just start with the Journal Cycle Audit Program. Now that's document 20.20. Firstly, just be aware that there is a specific audit program for journal entries. It looks identical to the other audit programs within RAC, except that it's not populated when you populate the other audit programs. It is already in the file. We default to having it in the file. It's also broken up into the exact same section, so if you do want to do control testing on journal entries, you are welcome to do that based on what you can then adjust in your audit plan. But generally you're probably going to want to follow a substantive approach. And in fact there are just two procedures outlined. One is for completeness and one is for the rest of the assertions. Once again, completeness and existence, very difficult to go about auditing those two assertions together. So there is a separate procedure for both. I just want to point out the nature of the procedure that we have for the completeness. It's talking about determining the completeness and accuracy of the population of journal entries. And depending on the accounting system that your client is using, this procedure may or may not be applicable for you. It's talking about taking your entire general ledger and eliminating all the journal transactions from the general ledger and then reconciling the general ledger back to the trial balance, making sure that you take general ledger excluding journals plus all the journals is equal to your final trial balance again. So it sounds like a bit of a circular procedure, and specifically for something like pastel, where if you do go and eliminate all the journals from the GL, you are going to be left with a reconciling trial balance. The point here though with this procedure is we need to go and consider the source. So if your client has a formal journal control system whereby they first got to get a journal voucher, and it's got to be authorized, and there must be supporting documents, and then it may be recorded into the accounting system. It may be more appropriate to go and make a sample of journal vouchers, randomly select journal voucher numbers for instance, and trace those through to ensure that they are recorded in the general ledger, so that they have actually gone and recorded all journals that should have been recorded. But that is the point of the completeness. We're wanting to make sure that all journal entries that should have been recorded have been recorded. Where, as I say, you're sitting with a pastel system where there are no controls over journal entries, and what is posted is basically what sits in pastel. It's going to be very difficult to do a specific procedure for completeness, and then I would just go about documenting how you consider completeness, or maybe it's with discussions or something like that. But it can get quite difficult to address that completeness issue depending on the system that you have. The next item, the next procedure is all about drawing a sample of material and other journal adjustments that has not been tested elsewhere, and then going and doing a number of procedures. Now, if you recall, on each audit program, we did point out that we wanted you to go and have a look. If you did test journals during your testing of any other section, we wanted you to carry it over to your journal testing, and that sits on document 20.30, which is our substantive tests of detail for journals. Okay, so here we have 12.30. Okay, what we now stipulate here is obviously it is the journal component, and we are just confirming that it's significant risk because we are dealing with a significant risk area. And the first question is asking you how many journals are there in the population. Okay, and it comes down to we need to eventually draw a sample size. If you only have 3 journals in the system, then obviously we can't draw a sample of 50. So that's just the point of requesting the number of journals. So it can be an estimate. If it's more than 120, 150 journals, it It's not going to affect the sample size, so just estimate the journals if it's too difficult for you to go and specifically count up the number of journals that are recorded. So I'm going to go and put in 500. It's an estimate. We then list all the components within the audit. So every component that you said you were going to test, we list them here, and we're asking you to go and document how many journal entries did you test under revenue? How many did you test under cost of sales? So that's just for those transactions or those tests where you found journals and you've done those additional procedures as required. So if you did 2 in revenue and maybe 3 under inventory, that then starts reducing your sample size. So it tells me that there are 5 journals already tested in total. There's still 495 odd that you need to sample from. We then go and calculate the sample size. We use 40% of the population as the sample size, and that's why I say if you get much higher, because we limit it to 50, we're limited to a sample size of 50. If your journals, if there are thousands of journals, you're still going to have 50. So once it gets very high, just do an estimate. So you'll see it does come up with a sample size of 200, but you can use then that suggested maximum sample size. If you want to increase it slightly, you're welcome to do so. It is an internal decision. Let's go and select 50 items. Now it does go and stratify your journals into 3 types within your sampling. So it specifies we're looking for year-end journals, after year-end journals, and then routine and non-routine journals. Now the 5 that we've already tested, it has stipulated we've tested them over here already. Just want to get my spotlight filter on. There we go. So we've selected those 5 already, okay? And it's calculating the number that remain as 45. Because I haven't inserted a number of journals that I've tested for year-end and after year-end, it's telling me that there are 45 left to go. Now we specify here that we suggest a maximum of 12 year-end journals and 12 after year-end journals. So those are journals just afterwards. Go and make sure that they're not trying to do reversals and things just after year-end for some fishy journals that they may have posted before year-end. That's the point of testing after year-end journals. And you would just then go and stipulate. If you can find 12, I recommend getting 12 of each of those. They are a little bit easier to find because you can look just in February and March to find those items. But if you don't have 12, maybe there are only 3, then obviously you can only select 3 of those items. But as soon as I start saying that I am selecting these journals, it's then reducing the last amount required for my sample C in terms of the number of journals required. All right, the procedure detail, you can then just go and specify what procedures you're doing per assertion, and that you would copy from your audit program. Obviously, if you don't do our specific procedure, if you're doing your own procedure, you would put those details in, or otherwise just put the details from the audit program in, and you can then go and start to do the sample test itself. And it'll go and make space for you for your year-end journals. There's space for 12. What's the date, the transaction number? Describe the rationale behind the journal. What's the amount in the GLs? Okay. Are there RAND errors? And I'll go through this in more detail when we do the substantive sampling. What you can then do at a later stage is extrapolate any errors as well. Okay. We then do after year-end journals. Okay, and then our last is the routine and non-routine journals that we need to do from action 6. Okay, once I have documented a few procedures, sorry, I just want to throw a few things in here. You'll see what it does is it goes and specifies the procedure for you in each column, and you can just use the drop-down list next to each to go and tick off each procedure, or where necessary, go and put a little note number in So you can just use that drop down. We've got up to number 20 in the drop down for note options. And then at the bottom of the working paper, we have a legend where you then can go and pull in that note number again. You can use your own characters if you wish, but put in the legend and then describe the detail of what that legend item then means. Okay, so that is how the journals will be tested, and this is where you would then go and do the sampling for your journal testing once you get to those journals.